Welcome to The Right Focus, a podcast for writers, newbies, and veterans, and everyone in between. We're hosted by Emma Lee with the assistance of Remy Black and Edie Rooms, all from Writers Inc. Books. Our focus is productivity, process, craft, and tools. Each episode lasts as long as it takes to fix a quick dinner, drive a short commute, or take a brisk walk. Resources and links are in the show notes. Visit us at therightfocus.blogspot.com. Now, on to this week's episode.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. How are you doing this afternoon?
Well, I'll answer that briefly because I don't want to take away time from this interview, but among other things, I teach English as a second language, and I pretty much know the kids each semester, but there was a new little girl, and they all came up second grade and they were showing me their work, and she didn't do so well with the spelling, and I don't believe in bursting kids' bubbles. I want to be
Right.
supportive. I mean, I know of teachers that say, no, this is the way you spell it. Go into the dictionary. And I was guiding her, but she's second grade. So I said to her, oh, this is really good. And it was, but she needed help. So at the end, she put her arms around me and she gave me a hug.
That's the teacher's best day is getting a hug from students. That was always a joy in my life when a student said, thank you, or I really needed something and you gave it to me. That was always wonderful for me.
Well, for me, I'm just reaching for my book because in case you need it, I'm a World Trade Center survivor.
Ah,
And I won't go into details because I don't like to talk about it.
mhm.
I lost friends that were like
Yes,
brothers and sisters to me that day.
right.
But excuse me. This weather, it's crazy here in New York. It's one day it's 80, the next day it's 40. My sinuses are ready to revolt. But at any rate, I I went into teaching because I was laid off of a very lovely job.
Hmm.
And I loved what I did. And my husband said to me, well, what do you want like most? I said, well, I love writing. I love my novel writing. But right now, I'm not exactly scoring for my chateau in France. I got the doorknob and I got the window. So he said, please, he said, do something that will make your heart happy. And I went into teaching. And I have to tell you, it's been a trip. It's been
Yes.
a good trip. It's been a trying trip.
Hmm.
Sometimes I go home and I want to tear my hair out and
Yes.
eat my hair. And I'm talking to you're a retired teacher.
Yes, I am. I was 30 years in the classroom, high school, but I did some long-term subbing with second graders, and I know how sweet they can be.
Oh, well, I tell you the truth. Excuse me. It's just rewarding when you see a kid crying. I
Yes.
could give you examples. I could write a book. The week before, I went into the class and the little girl, she was crying because she got very attached. And when I'm there, the teacher usually is in another part of the building for the day.
Right.
And
Hmm.
I said to her, look, I said, we're going to have fun, etc., etc. By second period, she was my helper.
Yes.
And she told the other kids, we have to, she's Japanese, so it's hard for her to pronounce R's. So she said, we have to help Mrs. R. But these are the things that make the trying times. And I'm
Yes.
sure you know what I'm talking
Oh,
about.
yes. I am retired now, and I do not regret leaving behind everything administration put on us to do that was unnecessary. Um,
You're
and
preaching
so,
to the choir.
so we have launched straight into this. Uh, let's get started on our interview because I got my timer going and Zoom is counting its timer too. I got the recording on, so I haven't forgotten that.
Oh, please. I was gonna say something to you. You said to remind you, so do you have the recording on?
Yes, it is. Thank goodness, because That's always worrisome to me. Um, so you are, tell us your
Joan,
name,
Joan Ramirez,
Joan Ramirez,
and I
and you're
have
a New
written
Yorker.
The Right Rules.
The Right Rules. Tell us about that book and how you came to write
Well, first of all, I am a New Yorker. You can tell a mile away. And I
it.
don't think I have an accent because I teach in New Jersey, but whatever, whatever floats anyone's boat.
So New
Um,
Jersey's worse.
no comment on anything. No comment anymore on anything. My kids love me. I love my kids. That's all that matters.
Yes.
When I was working in the World Trade Center, I'm a 9/11 survivor as well.
Right. Mm-hmm.
I worked with, pardon me, the most wonderful group of engineers. They were just glorious. And the problem is they were from many, many, many countries. And my manager used to say to me, I can't, sorry, I can't read the correspondence.
Ah,
They're brilliant, but they have to be able to write to me in language that is English, because this is, after all, America.
yes. And English is the what do they call it? The lingua franca, the common language that everyone needs to speak. Hmm.
And I'm very firm on that.
Yes.
And I started a program on a monthly basis where I would teach them the grammar. I would have exercises. I would give them homework with a little certificate.
Hmm.
I was in my class and he has his, and he's very proud of it. And he's a genius. He's a genius. So when I did that, I said to myself, gee, I'm really happy about what I'm doing. And I was doing a lot of other things. Fast forward since 9/11,
Hmm.
one day I found out from a colleague all the communicators were going to be let go. And I thought, oh my God. So during COVID, I thought to myself, there are so many people who have been let go
Hmm.
who have talent, but it says on the book, technical writing presentation in English is a second language guide, but it's really for anyone who
Hmm.
wants to start their own business. It
Right.
was a point in their life, maybe I would say in late 20s up to 100 and beyond. And they just have, like you, they have a lot of knowledge and they
Mhm.
want to incorporate.
Right.
And I wrote this book, and the things that have happened since COVID have been incredible. The book is being used in the it's part of the collection in the London Consortium of Libraries.
Wow. Mhm.
A couple of days ago, I gave a talk to the International Women's Writing Guild on being an authorpreneur, because this is what the world revolves around. With the children, it's love. It's love and teaching.
Right.
But unfortunately or fortunately, it is money when it comes to everyone has to pay the bills and everyone has to have a sense of self-worth.
Mhm.
And this book has sections in it for how to put yourself together, how to present, how to
Mhm.
give a speech. But unlike, I looked at 100 books before I wrote this one.
Mhm.
This one is, and I, I tell you no lie, this one is not even 60 pages, but it incorporates everything that you need to really and truly not only open your own business, but to be of service to the division that you're in,
Mhm.
whether it be my husband engineering or marketing or communications. It's very important that whoever comes to this country has the knowledge to write, speak, and read in cohesive, clear, concise English.
Right. Right.
And
Totally agree.
you know, I cite my Japanese students as an example because They do have the problem with the R's and with the
Hmm.
L's, but they're really quite sweet and quite wonderful about it. I mean, I've taught in Tokyo, I've taught in Vietnam, I've
Hmm.
done literacy, but wherever I go, when I was in Seoul, students walked up to me because they wanted to practice their English. It's
Right.
important to be able to communicate.
Hmm.
Yes, I have students who are Spanish. I have two students who are French. I have students who are German. I used to speak much more Japanese, but I've lost a lot of it, unfortunately. They're beautiful languages,
Hmm.
but English is how we all communicate.
Yes, it is. Hmm.
And I'm very happy about this book because it's not so much a tutorial as it is a helping hand.
Right. Right. So you were talking about there's a portion on it, presenting yourself very well. Um, and I think sometimes people forget that our first method of communication is appearance and how you're standing and how you're sitting and what gestures you're using and how far apart you are standing from people. Then we get into communication, and without those two aspects, that nonverbal and then that verbal aspect, we lose those people we're trying to communicate with.
You're very astute. And not only do we do lose that, but we lose prospective clients
Yes,
because
yes.
there was a fellow from I don't remember what country it was, but he was so nervous he'd never spoken before in public, and he was gripping the podium like someone had a gun to his head.
Oh
And
my.
and good Lord, he was a nervous wreck. And
Hmm.
he said when he was through, he had to go out and get a cigarette, and he hadn't smoked in 5 years. And I said, "Oh my God." And I said, I'm enrolling you in my class.
Hmm.
And within a couple of days, we had him rolling. But it's important to have good posture.
Yes,
It's important, as my mother said, always sit up straight. But
yes.
when in
Making me
the,
sit up straight.
it's like when you're a teacher, I'm preaching to the
Hmm.
choir.
Hmm.
When you're in that classroom, all the lessons in the world as a student teacher, everything goes out the window unless you are able to put it together.
Right.
It's the
Hmm.
same thing when you are in front of an audience.
Hmm.
You have to be able to articulate clearly and concisely, not only the posture, and you also have to make sure that you're fortified. No
Hmm.
gurgling at the stomach, so you're not hungry. Uh,
Hmm.
I wouldn't schedule anything in the afternoon because a lot of people after work, they like to have a glass of wine. Wine makes me very relaxed and sleepy. That's not the way you want to give a presentation.
No, it's not.
So, and also a very important item is the papers. I don't have my, because if I could swing the camera, you would see everything's in order for the rest of the afternoon. But when I first gave a presentation,
Mhm.
I was sitting in the audience. I was about to go up and I had my index cards. And my father was a teacher with the Board of Ed for 50 years.
Mhm.
And he would have been a wonderful principal, but in those days, it was a different world.
Mhm.
And my mother was a copywriter, so I had it in the home. But to get back to
Right.
the index cards, this poor woman, she had a group of papers, they weren't clipped. Her hands were trembling. Everything went on the floor.
Oh no.
Now, I'm old enough to remember when women were more obliged to wear dresses and
Mhm.
skirts than slacks.
Yes.
And I think you can relate to what I'm saying. And
Mhm.
this poor woman is down on her knees. She doesn't have a short skirt on, but it was such an awkward thing. And by
Mhm.
the time she got up and she was organizing everything, she had like 10 minutes to speak. So, really, I put everything on index cards. I
Mhm.
bolded. I don't anymore because it's so ingrained. I
Mhm.
had to sign in uh with the secretary in school yesterday, and I always have my lesson plans. But she said, well, let me see if the teacher left you any notes. And I said, it's not a problem because everything's up here from kindergarten to high school. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, I prefer now college because sometimes there's more of an eagerness, and with
Yes.
little children, there's more of a challenge.
Right.
But you have to know here, you have to go in front of a mirror. If English isn't your second language, your posture, your facial expressions, even if you're thinking about it, you're going to be nervous. There was another lovely woman from Japan, and she looked in the mirror, and I said, "Look," I said, "you're not even there, and you're getting nervous, and your your face is making your facial gestures." I
Yes.
said, "Your muscles," I said, "everything." So it's for me, I love the index cards because you can see it, you put it down on the podium and it's not bulky. So,
Right.
but these are things that if even if in France, I've given presentations in London, I've given presentations all over the world, but presentation training is universal. You
Yes.
have to be able to be simpatico with your audience,
Mm-hmm.
but you also have to have a feel for the audience, but
Mm-hmm.
you have to respect the fact that the audience, especially if they're adults and not teachers, who at the end of the day, okay, I can go home. Many people at 3 o'clock, if you give a presentation at 4, that's it, their day is over. A lot of people work very scattered hours since
Right.
COVID, and
Mm-hmm.
they plan their calendar. So you have to be aware of all of that.
Mm-hmm. Yes. I totally understand it. So, what else? What else led you to the writing of this book? And how did you go about writing it? I know you said you did a lot of research by looking at, I think you said 100 different books um, ahead of time so that you would know how they were approaching things. How did you decide to set up your book?
I set it up at the same time I incorporated it's JL Regan Enterprises
Hmm.
because I wanted something that at first it was just for technical and ESL, but now it's for everyone. I mean, it doesn't say that, but I say that way. I wanted something that anyone who is looking for a business, anyone in a business school.
Hmm.
So I went to the different associations and I looked online to see, even with the TED Talks, just for the heck of it, to see what they were doing.
Hmm.
So I watched people to see, well, what are they doing? How can I be different? How can I enhance what's already been
Right.
done?
Hmm.
Because I don't have to reinvent the wheel. It's my work, it's copyrighted. But I did do a lot of I'm a journalist, so I did a lot of what is called primary research, where
Right.
I went out and I spoke to people and I
Right.
asked them, and then the man or woman on the street, I guess from my days of being a journalist, what would you
Mhm.
like to see in the book? And then I went back to my network where I worked and I taught for almost 20 years. And my husband was very good about that because he ran a division. And I
Mhm.
spoke to the managers and one of my former supervisors, and I said, what would you like to see?
Right.
So whether it's this book or I'm working on a historical trilogy.
Mhm.
Unfortunately, I'd love to have prevented 6 million Jewish deaths, but I have spoken to a lot of Holocaust survivors.
Mhm.
I've spoken to a lot of second gens because when I write the book, I want to include things that will be germane to them. What do
Right.
they want to see?
Mhm.
So I
Right.
always go to my audience. That's really the best way.
And they serve as your primary sources for that. Tell me more about this historical fiction idea that you have and you're pursuing the research on.
Oh, it's the first book is already written, and I'm so superstitious. All I'll say is let us pray. I went to Auschwitz
Ah,
many, many years. No, I went to Auschwitz during COVID, but I
mhm.
went to Dachau 30 years ago.
Right.
I'm very serious about being Jewish. I went to Yad Vashem, and I wanted, I guess because of 9/11.
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of personal things going on in my life. I wasn't able to do it. So I have just completed book two in the trilogy. It is about a businesswoman in Paris
Mm-hmm.
who has a factory, and she saves her Jewish workers from going to the camps with very unusual consequences for her.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And it was interviewing Holocaust survivors, going to a lot of historical societies,
Mm-hmm.
interviewing people live, online, from here to South Africa, some incredibly wonderful people,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of them in Israel, in Germany, in Britain,
Mm-hmm.
and it's come together in ways that I had never imagined. From that, I've already published a suspense a story in another anthology for military writers.
Mm-hmm.
So one thing mushrooms into another, but you have to have a passion for it. My
Yes.
first published newspaper article was when I was 9 years old.
Hey.
It it was in the Railway Gazette, and it was about a sunflower and how my sunflower grew and how I feel about flowers and the princely sum of whatever it was way back in the dinosaur days. My mother took the check. She held on to it to me for me, and we opened my first checking account.
Mm-hmm.
But I have always loved the written word,
Mm-hmm.
always. And I have always championed people who have difficulty,
Yes. Mm-hmm.
whether it's a little second grade munchkin
Mm-hmm.
or someone who is in their 90s who needs to get, believe it or not, their high school equivalency and never got around to it.
Right.
I think there's nothing more rewarding, and I can be a material girl very easily because what woman doesn't like pretty things?
Yes.
But at the end of the day, what makes my heart sing is seeing the smile on the faces of people who are struggling.
Mm-hmm.
Because if I can't do that, if everything, I mean, I have lovely clothes, I've traveled, but if I can't do something to help somebody, then I don't feel alive inside.
And that's what gives us a a better feeling about our own self and our place in the world and our purpose for life. And I think people who have no idea of themselves in their place in the world, or they have no sense of a purpose, have a very difficult life. They're not even living. They're just, I think of them as being hunched in their life, very self centered, and not reaching out at all to anyone. And you can't be that way. Um,
Well, you can.
well,
I
that's
mean,
true. You
you
can.
can. You can. I have, excuse me. My husband had a colleague who was asked to do something, and my husband wound up doing it, which is why my husband championed my cause because he was going crazy. He couldn't read any of his staffs. He had a staff of 50. He couldn't read their correspondence. Anyway,
Right.
one fellow, when he was asked to do something extra, pointed out on his job description, that's not in my job description.
Oh, oh, oh. That's.
So I'm not going to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, my job description as a teacher
Mm-hmm.
does not involve staying in the classroom all day with one class. I have to go to another one.
Yes.
It doesn't involve when a little girl is crying her eyes out
Mm-hmm.
because she's so traumatized. She's so used to a teacher. There's a million things that it doesn't cover.
Mm-hmm.
And that's life. You walk into a room, I walk into the office. I thought I was going to work on an annual report. You have to go to this facility. I worked a lot of facilities, a lot of
Mm-hmm.
different transportation hubs. Go here because you have to cover this. Okay, well, I could say no, it's not in my job description, or I can say, okay, I'm going to do it, and
Mm-hmm.
that's it.
And you stay open to opportunities. And those opportunities often open more and more doors along the way. And that's what I see. You got me talking about things that's very close to my heart, and I'm over here crying on you.
Let me ask you, where are you coming from?
I am coming to you from East Tennessee, but I was
Oh,
raised
for the
in North
love of
Georgia.
God. My one of my dearest friends used to live in Nashville.
Ah, we call it Nash Vegas.
Yes. And many years ago, I had some family there, but they've passed on now. And we went there for a writing conference. I took my husband, obviously. We had the time of our life. We went to what is it, the Grand Ole Opry,
Yes. Hmm.
and we went to, I forget the name of the street, but we had a ball.
Yeah. Well, if you've heard of Dollywood, and you may
Yes,
have,
yes, I like Dolly
very,
Parton.
very close to where I am. So that gives you an idea, and the kind of people that are around in this area. Um, so I wanted to ask you, and we're starting to run out of time. Uh, we've got less than 5 minutes. When will your historical fiction be coming out? Are you going to independently publish it, or
It's being reviewed by a publisher.
okay? Mhm.
I am praying sometime next year. I'm
Okay.
praying the book one, but it's in God's hands.
It is. Well, everything is in God's hands. What did you find harder? Well, I probably can answer this for you. Did you find writing nonfiction harder because you knew that things had to be set up certain ways and was very logical in what you had to do, or did you find writing the historical fiction harder?
I found the historical fiction harder because in nonfiction, there's very little emotions. It's
Yes,
basically state the facts, ma'am, like a journalist.
right.
And
Hmm.
in this historical, there is a romance, a beautiful one in
Hmm.
the story.
Right.
And there's also a child's life at stake.
Hmm.
And I am very emotional. And I
Yes,
found it very difficult to transition.
you would, if you were like me, you poured your heart and your soul basically into the emotions of the scene, and it would wipe me out adrenaline wise for the rest of the day. um, and so with that, it was very my historical fiction was very hard for me to write as well. um, I like incorporating mystery into it because that makes the logic part of my brain help somewhat balance the emotional part of me. um, what can you tell us about any other writing that you're going to do or have been doing?
Oh, goodness, I've got a psychological suspense coming up that's going to pit two brothers with a father who is incarcerated, and he's going to
Hmm.
pit the brothers against each other. I've got a little picture book that I'm going to be sending off to have children be more appreciative of nature.
Right.
I've got a homeless girl who's going to really make a difference in the world. I've got about six books in the works.
You sound like a true writer with the need to write constantly coming out of you and interest in all these different areas that you find at writing as an outlet to do. Um,
If I can't write, I can't breathe. And that's
yes,
it, bottom line.
yes, yes, I see that. I see that very much. Okay, according to this, we've got maybe a minute and 30 seconds. Any last thing that you want to say?
Yes, writing is only as good as the heart, mind, and soul that the author puts into the work.
Yes,
And it's
yes.
not all about money. As I said, I love money. Who doesn't?
Oh,
But
yes,
I want to produce quality work, quality over quantity every single day.
yes, yes. And you have to have these original ideas. Um, And if you are constantly racing to finish this work so that you can dash into the next work and you can put out more and more and more and more and more, and it all becomes basically the same story over and over again, you will lose your readers.
You're very astute on that. I learned that the hard way when I was a journalist. I don't do that anymore. I have them all lined up. I have them outlined, but one at a time.
Right. Very much one at a time. Well, thank you so much for talking with us. And the book that you have out, The Right Rules, WRITE Rules, yes. And all good luck and fortune with your historical fiction and your other stories that you have described to me. Thank you very much.
It was a pleasure, and keep in touch with me, and I wish you a happy holiday season.
Happy holidays to you too.
Thanks for listening to The Right Focus, a podcast for writers at all levels, hosted by Emma Lee from Writers Inc. Books, assisted by Remy Black and Edie Runes. Our focus is productivity, process, craft, and tools. Music is licensed through Audio Jungle, called Background Music Loop. Its creator is Alexander Polishchuk, known on Audio Jungle as Plastic 3. The music comes in different iterations. Show notes and resource links for this and other episodes can be found at therightfocus.blogspot.com. Write to us at winkbooks@aol.com when you have questions, comments, and speculations. We will try to answer you as quickly as possible. By the way, we will not mind your email address. That's rude. If you find value in our content, share with your writing friends or write a review. We're small beans here without the advertising budget of the big peeps, and you can make a difference. And whatever occurs, write on.